Mhm.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the NEWSPASTE Podcast. I got a really interesting guest today, someone who we're going to see eye to eye on a load of things because I believe politically he, though is classed as on the right, I think his views are objective, often libertarian, pro-constitutional, pro the right rules, not the let's adopt new rules for whatever willy-nilly, as we say over here, for whatever means and purposes trending at the time. I really do like some form of permanence within, like, the idea of a constitution, the idea that the authorities have to abide by the same law that the people who work every day and live in these communities that they govern also have to abide. So I'm going to welcome Shreiff Mack over. A very interesting man. Welcome to the NEWSPASTE Podcast. How are you?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled when I get to speak with foreign countries. I live in Arizona, and I was a cowboy sheriff from Arizona. I was never much of a cowboy, even though I was born and raised here in Arizona. But I was more into sports and football, basketball, baseball, and student government and choir and drama. And so, look, I love versatility. I love trying new things. Some I was taught by my mother. And so I'm really glad to be on your show. And I would love to do more shows in Japan and China. And of course, China's not going to allow it. But I just want to reach out more because the bottom line for me is that every government in this world should be doing one very important thing, and that is to guarantee the liberty of the people that live in that country. I don't care if it's England, I don't care if it's France, I don't care if it's Iran, Iraq, Egypt. Every country should be defending the civil rights of every citizen in that state, in that country, in that government. And why we can't understand that, and why we can't make that a goal, and the purpose of all government, and the purpose of all government in our Declaration of Independence, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Why can't everybody be a part of that? You don't have to be America. You don't have to be like America. We want you to be like your own. We want your culture. We love your cultures. But freedom should be at the top of the list for every single person, regardless of color, regardless of creed, regardless of nationality. I don't care who your daddy was. I don't care where you were born. I care that you are part of one race, and that's the human race. And we're all in this together. And if there's exemptions to that, we're all going to get our turn. And it appears that has happened historically.
I like what you say there. I talk with a man called Graham H. Moore, who's the head of the English Constitutional Party over here in the UK. He's a great man with a great lot of knowledge, and he points out that over in Wales, where I am, in England next door, they use, of course, English constitutional law, which is a very ancient constitutional law that's worked very well for quite a long time. It can always be improved upon and can be altered when needs be. Texas also uses, over in the States, Texas is a state that also uses English constitutional law, and the idea of a constitution has evolved over time, over a very long period of time, and has slowly adapted. And I feel that there's a sudden urgency as we approach the digital era and the information era to suddenly adopt and allow things like people like academics to change the idea of how we perceive a constitution at a very low level, a very base level that undermines constitutional democracies themselves. Let's start off, right? So I don't consider myself of the left or the right because I'm a journalist. I like to get into an objective state I left. I used to be. When you said you don't care who my dad was, I don't care. You know, like the same with other people. You know, you prove yourself within your lifetime. But I was brought up in a left wing family. My father was definitely a socialist. Used to march next to socialist leaders in the UK. Was a steel worker. You know, and Britain at that time, the steel industry. You know, it was on the edge of nationalisation, and it was always rule for within the left wing parties, which meant that nationalisation was always on the agenda. That got taken out under Blair, of course, with the left. So I've always been of the left. But where do you consider yourself residing? Because I'm sure that, you know, lots of people would say right-wing libertarian or constitutional libertarian, etc. But I feel that you've got a little bit more objectivity than that. Where would you consider yourself on the modern political spectrum?
Well, I've called myself a constitutional conservative libertarian with a small L. I've actually been in the Libertarian Party before. I've tried just about every party there is. A lot of the third parties, I've tried those because I became very disenchanted with the Republican Party a time or two. I was a Democrat when I was sheriff. My views, though, of freedom have never changed, no matter what party I was in. I do not and will never support abortion. I believe that's absolutely a horrible thing to do when our entire Declaration of Independence, which is the backdrop of our Constitution, backdrop of our government, that when it says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, those are the three basic fundamental God-given liberties that are the basis of our whole government. And that our government now says, but killing a baby in the womb is fine. I don't get that. No, I don't get that. And I will never support that. I think it's very demonic to think that, well, I don't have to be careful. I can just kill it. You know, I don't have to be careful with my sex partners, and I don't have to be responsible or accountable for my actions. I can just kill it. That is ever happening. But another one too, though, is that the American people are literally being forced by government with our taxpayer dollars to fund Planned Parenthood, $800 million a year, and they provide no government service. They're not part of our government. They're a private club, and yet we're forced to pay to that. And then Planned Parenthood takes that money and donates it back to the campaigns of the biggest abortionists in Congress. So that's all criminal. That's all very criminal. And we have no choice in the matter. But I'm thinking maybe we're going to, because I think the Christians of this country are going to get tired of this, and they're going to rebel, and they're going to stop paying to the government. And I think that that's a legitimate rebellion. Mm-hmm. It's peaceful and it's effective, and I think we need to do it. Ronald Reagan said that our tax structure was un-American and totally corrupt, and that it deserved a rebellion. And so, yeah, I totally agree with that. Where I'm on the left a little bit is I was part of it. And maybe you can even Google, I don't have one here in front of me. Maybe you saw it when you were doing research on me, but my undercover narcotics picture. When I was a cop in Utah, I was actually an undercover narcotics officer. I had a different name. I lived in a different place. I had 3 little kids at home. My wife was literally a single mom during that time. Very rarely did I get to go home. I would sneak home, and then I couldn't go outside. And so I had to stay in my home. I could not be seen in public with my wife and children, could not go to church with my wife and children. Luckily, that part was only about 6 months. The entire assignment lasted a year to do all the paperwork and do all the court cases. But I don't support the drug war anymore. I believe it's too much of an excuse for big brother government. And I don't like the idea, 2 ideas from government, from police, that they're hell-bent on finding out what's in my pocket, what's in my car, what's in my home, what's in my chest of drawers, and that they assume the role of protecting us from our own stupidity or protecting us from our own addictions or appetites. I don't want a police force in the world that believes that's their responsibility. I spent 20 years in law enforcement. I was undercover. I've done it all. I've done everything imaginable in law enforcement, but I never beat anybody up and I never shot anybody. Now, I would have done both if it was totally necessary. There's one time that I tell fellow law enforcement about an incident I had with a deputy. They said, "You should have shot that guy." I said, "We both had very good cover, and his 10-year-old son was standing at his side."
Mm-hmm.
And I told my deputy, I said, "Unless he starts shooting, I don't want to kill him."
Mm-hmm.
But even then, I said, it is your choice. I'm not going to make that choice for you, but this is what I want you to be thinking about. As long as that son is standing next to him and he's not pulling a trigger, and like I said, we had good cover. We weren't just standing there wide open. So we finally talked him into putting the gun down, and he did. He was arrested, and I don't believe in gun control. I've made a court case that was about saving the right to keep bear arms, but I took that man's guns away from him. And I said, "You're hooked on meth, and until you get a rehab, I'm not giving your guns back to you.
Mm-hmm.
I can't stop you from going and getting another one, but I'm keeping you from this, and I really hope you'll take care of yourself. You scared the hell out of your son and us, and you need to get this problem solved." So I'm all for legalization of marijuana. Maybe I should say decriminalization.
Mm-hmm.
Because what do we know about history? Prohibition did not work. Making alcohol illegal was stupid, and I don't drink, and I don't want anybody else to drink, and I don't smoke, and I don't want anybody else to smoke. But those are horrible things, and I just don't believe that, along with Abraham Lincoln, I read his stuff, that prohibition makes crimes out of things that aren't crimes at all.
Yep.
And that's where we've gotten with the drug war.
Yeah,
And
I have to say that.
Can anybody tell us that the drug war's been successful? Come on.
A lot of that drug war actually got funded just after prohibition of alcohol, because they suddenly had a massive amount of funding for cracking down on alcohol. So they focused all of that on cannabis. And yeah. I can tell you, it swings backwards and forwards throughout history, what is allowed and what isn't allowed. But we are a little bit more sensible than that now, and I think everybody can see that there's benefits to decriminalizing almost everything drug wise to an extent.
I agree with that.
And again, that is a facet of libertarianism. Now, I find it very interesting that you talk about that, because I have done a lot of research, of course, on the drug war. I've lived in South America. I grew weed in just a few plants in South America as well. So I mean, I could say that I've got a dog in the fight somehow.
Central America.
Yeah. It's a fantastic. I live down in Chile. I got a son down there too. And, the drug war, obviously, a lot of, you could say, the Western people who were based in South America during that period were somehow involved in a lot of trafficking, a lot of arms stuff. There's been a lot of history where intelligence itself uses their opportunity to commit other crimes under the guise. So I do agree with you about
and
that.
I don't want anybody to get crazy thinking here. I don't give breaks on drunk driving.
Mm-hmm.
That's a life and death situation.
Agreed.
And I don't care what you're high on. I don't care if you're high on prescription drugs. I don't care if you're high on marijuana, cocaine, fentanyl. I don't care what you're high on. If you're driving and you're impaired, you should go to jail.
Agreed.
Okay?
I can definitely agree with you on that. My dad was in a car accident in 1989, which broke nearly every bone in his body. One arm and one leg. He was in a wheelchair. He had left. He was he had left unbroken, and he was in a wheelchair for 18 months. It crippled. It crippled our family more than anything. At the time, because he was such a central figure in the family, and of course he had lasting damage after that and lasting issues, and that was actually a drunk off-duty police officer, and they lost all the evidence in the case as well. So he never actually. He later got arrested and convicted on some other charges for something else, doing it over and over again. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter. I agree with you completely. Now, one thing that you were saying about that, there's the drug war and wars like that are often utilized by nefarious actors. Now, at the moment, a lot of people would say globalism and technocracy is one of the biggest dangers to our society, to constitutions, to states, and to democracy in general. And that when you say, it's like Big Brother by the back door as well, these things, that is very much a facet of technocracy, is that they want to codify in algorithms rules and a different form of constitution, as Klaus Schwab talked about the Great Reset. Do you feel that you are politically, I suppose you'd say, predisposed to opposing the coming technocracy because you believe in libertarianism or liberty?
Yeah, technology, even before AI started, is something I've always been reluctant to accept. I kept a flip phone way after all these other smartphones and Androids and all those others. And my kids and my grandkids are saying, "Oh, get this phone. It's look, a 3-year-old can do it." And I said, that worries me too. I don't want a 3-year-old to know how to do all that. They shouldn't know how to do all that. But screen time, I believe, is killing the world, killing initiative. You go to a restaurant and you see a family sitting there, and every single one of them are on the phone. Mm-hmm. And it is brought us so much easy entertainment. Like kids, when they're traveling, what do? You give them an iPad and let them play any games, what they want. They never talk. They just do that. If you take it away, they cry, and that's about it. And when we traveled, when I was youngster, we sang songs and we played games and we communicated and we got to know each other better.
Yeah,
now,
we did.
Technocracy has taken us totally away from valuable human relationships.
Yes.
And so, no, I don't like it. I keep saying that I'm going to go to Hawaii someday. I'm going to go out on a boat and I'm going to throw my cell phone into the ocean.
Yeah.
But I don't want to contaminate the ocean either. So I love Mother Nature.
I would say what you're describing there is people, and this is one of the points I'd like to make when we talk about these subjects, is that the people are now deferring to their phone. Are they not deferring their liberty over to devices to tell them what to do? Isn't that what do people actually know what liberty is?
Yes, because you can be followed everywhere you go as long as you have your phone with you. And not only that, they can follow your footprints where you've been. They can literally go to my phone and say every place where I've been, wherever place you've been. And I told my wife one day when Trump was talking and all the threats that have gone towards Trump and the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and I said, I don't want that kind of fame. I don't want to do that. I want to be free. If I want to get up and go to Disneyland with my family, I want to be able to do that without having 100 security agents around me. I want to be able to just go to the beach with my grandkids and play with them. And I want to be able to go to a movie, with my wife and not have 10 security guards around me the whole time. I want freedom, and I want it for everybody else. And that's another reason why I don't like the technology that has taken over our lives. And I really am afraid of AI. I'm really disappointed in Amazon replacing 600,000 jobs with robots. I don't want to be part of a robot society. That movie, I, Robot, with Will Smith, that has always worried me. And now it's coming to fruition. It's looking like it's all possible because these computers, these robots can be programmed to be very human
Mm-hmm.
and to discern. And it just, Johnny, it has gone too far.
It's
And we've
progressing
gone too far with it.
Yeah, it's progressing exponentially. That's the most worrying thing, because we're now further than we can even imagine, and that exponential progression from not being able to imagine is the unimaginable, and nobody really wants the unimaginable. We need always to pull human endeavor back from the brink, because we are predisposed to, again, like I say, Nietzsche talked about last man. Nolan Gertz talked about people being told how much they should run by their Fitbits instead of thinking, how much do I feel like I should run? How much do I want to run? You know, people don't ask themselves questions. You know, if Marcus Aurelius was around today and said, you know, at the end of the day, look across your day from a bird's eye view, you would just be stuck in, most people would be stuck in their phone, and they would be just scrolling and asking others for the answers to who they are and themselves. So we've entered in now. I want to go over to the politics of now, because one of the I'd say for me, and I'll tell you where I stand with President Trump. For me, I've researched the Epstein case for a long time. That's become a way just to distract, really, and to smear people. And I will say in Trump's favor that he was one of the only people I've researched. I've spoken about this out loud. I got an article coming out about it soon. He was one of the only people who broke connections with Epstein after he was being investigated, and later he was convicted. He broke off and he said, no, I'm not interested in that anymore. While everybody else who got involved with Epstein remained involved during his conviction and his first prison term, and they also got involved with him afterwards, something that President Trump didn't do. So I think that's a bit of a red herring. So I'd like to kind of throw that out the door a little bit and say I don't stick with the standard view on what's happening with that. But the negatives, I would say, for me, is one is allowing Israel such open. I mean, it's clearly what's happening on the ground is horrific, and there's no, you know, an eye for an eye doesn't mean 1,700 against like 600,000 deaths. You know, that doesn't sit right to me, and the ability for these people like Jeff Bezos, who are taking away jobs and transferring them over to robots and AI, or a Peter Thiel and some of the others, he's allowed the technocrats in at the ground level. Those are the two main criticisms that I have of Trump. What do you think of those criticisms?
You know, whatever it is that Netanyahu has done, and some other high-ranking governments, or the secret combinations that exist within the society or government of Israel, is no justification for anti-Semitism, and I'm very much against all of that. And the democratic institutions in America have really turned anti-Semitic, and I don't support that ever. You know, if there's Christians that do something wrong, it's not a slight against Christianity. If Presbyterians, if Methodists, if Mormons, whatever it is.
Could you transpose that same thought process to Muslims and to the right?
Exactly. And I was a school teacher 5 or 6 years ago, and I did it for about 5 years. And I had, it was a very strong Hispanic district. So we had lots of Mexican students, Mexican Americans. And some of them were DACA. Their parents had actually come here illegally. And I loved those kids, and they loved me. And we had some Muslim kids, and I got to know their parents. I've been in their homes, and Abdul, I still have him on my phone, and we keep in touch. and one of them was on my basketball team, one of the Muslim kids, and he loved basketball. And he told me something once. He said, I've seen racism and I've seen Islamophobia around. And he said, and I made the kids call me Sheriff. I don't like being called Mr. Mack. And so he said, Sheriff, I have to tell you something. I never saw any of that from you. And my sister said the same thing. And he says, we just loved you and we loved your class. And I said, that really means a lot to me. Thank you so much. I feel that way in my heart, and I'm glad that you felt it and saw it. But the other part of this, though, with what's going on at universities and anti-Semitism, and I cannot stand that. I cannot stand that there were kids that celebrated the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And some school teachers did that in front of their students, actually celebrating that. And politicians in Washington, D.C. Gave tacit or sometimes outright support of what happened to him. And none of them were contrite or humble about it and said, I really feel for his wife and his parents and his children. No, AOC just came out, didn't say anything like that, just said, well, these people are so stupid. We tried to get gun control going and nobody will support us. She actually said universal background checks. I sued the federal government regarding background checks in 1994. When we won at the Supreme Court, background checks were never stopped. AOC, why don't you take a look at yourself and look at the law? There have been universal background checks in America for over 40 years. And now, and then she makes a Charlie Kirk thing into a universal background check, like as if that guy who shot him wouldn't have passed a background check, because he would have. And that wouldn't have stopped anything. And so
it's just about it's more
this is
rules
what I
from the
hate
back
about
door.
politics.
Yeah.
And so I'm sick and tired of that. Look, if Netanyahu's doing something wrong, I've heard Trump criticize him several times. And why he didn't do that. So I don't think Trump is easily swayed by Netanyahu, but I also want to appreciate that he's been one of our allies in the Middle East, which we have very few of. But at the same time, I don't support, excuse me, I don't support foreign aid. The United States is giving money to our enemies. I don't support the United Nations. I don't support the money that we've paid to the United Nations. The United Nations has not kept the world safe. They're all about global government. And now they want to tax the people of England and the people of America. And no, we should get out of the United Nations. They have not done anything good regarding liberty. They were formed by communists. They're run by communists. They've done nothing to call China to task with the failure of human rights. And they've done nothing to get Russia to stop the invasion of Ukraine. And so they've done nothing. They've done nothing except make the world a worse place. So that's where I'm at on all of that.
Yeah. There's a couple of things there, because I see. First of all, I say, the United Nations, when that was set up with a vision, a straight after World War II, post-war vision of the world, the world, and instantly, I mean, Israel hadn't been founded yet. Nahum Goldman, who was one of the founding fathers of Israel, was given an office straight away in the UN. Their plans were, let's reform the world into a way that we can have globalism. That did include supporting the world as it looks now and creating it. And the problems and the issues that we got are kind of from that as well. A lot of different other problems. But I'd say that when you talk about Charlie Kirk and you talk about the people on the campuses and tension on the campuses, I would put forward that there's a lot of neoconservatives policy of the past that is the reason why that exists. When you're talking about you don't want to be funding other things, we've seen the Department of Government Efficiency, which I think is a reorganization or digitalization of neoconservative sort of arms and structures. So people like Soros and others have been setting up non-governmental organizations for years. You know, they did the same out of the German Marshall Fund, out of Harvard. Guido Goldman and his gang also helped set up loads of different NGOs for color revolutions. Now, there was a purpose for that, and it was to break down the Soviet Union. That's understandable. But afterwards, it was about taking over the country's political structures so that they could force globalism upon the people of that structure, of that country. So I think a lot of what we're seeing on the campuses is a projection of the money that's gone to support that NGO agenda. I agree with you, but that neoconservatism has changed into something else, and I think people like Peter Thiel represent that neoconservatism. So it's a bit of an issue now.
Now, one of my strong views is something you mentioned earlier, and I said, well, maybe Johnny and I are going to actually have a disagreement or disagree on something, because you said the word democracy, and America is not a democracy, and democracies have failed almost as bad as socialism and communism. The founding fathers called democracy mobocracy. In other words, they're very dictatorial, because as long as you can have one more than 50%, you can do anything. You can get away with anything. But democracy, and I don't know if you think you made a mistake mentioning it, but democracy is a failed system of government, and the founding fathers in America were against it. And there's the D word, democracy, is not mentioned in our Constitution, in the Declaration of Independence, in the Articles of Confederation, Federalist Papers. It might have a mentioning of it, but it was not promoted by our founding fathers to be with the government where we were supposed to be. Our Pledge of Allegiance says, "And to the republic for which it stands." We are a constitutional republic, and most of the rights that we've gotten in our Constitution, Declaration of Independence, came from the history of England, and I'm proud of that. England, like the 1650 Rights of Englishmen and the Magna Carta, these were very powerful. The English leaders and monarchies were very poor at protecting rights, but English leaders were very good at promulgating them. And
there was an English civil war for the 1650 change. There was an English civil war that went alongside it to make sure that they could institute that. But it is a progression that these things lead to war.
About democracy is not synonymous with liberty. And so other than that, I don't know why you used it, but you did. But I wanted to give my opinion about democracy.
Well, I think democracy is even worse than what you say, because when you say when you say you only have to get 51%, in actual fact you only have to get 51% of the popular vote. Not even that. You get the parties are split into loads of different parties over here, for instance. So the popular party will get like 25% of the popular vote nowadays to be able to govern, and that means in actual fact they're only representative of something like 10 to 12% of the people of the country. So it's not even like you're ruled by a different minority, and it's a minority that can be mobilized by the media. And I don't want to be ruled by the media, and I think currently we are in a state where we're partly ruled by the media. Okay. This is the way I see society working. Works, and you can criticize, or we could talk about this, and then I'd like to get on to your visions of what you want to see President Trump do. But I go back to a woman, and I've talked about this a couple of times. A woman called Alice Ricks, who worked for the San Francisco Examiner as a reporter between 1896 and 1906. I think it was around then that she left. And she used to write a weekly column. She was a fantastic writer. And she one day she wrote in 1896, she wrote about Bohemian Grove. and she described Bohemian Grove very early on. You know, this old boys club network that had been just invented, and this woman from San Francisco went and she asked her. What she did was she used three characters as a way to describe her conversation with three fictional characters so that she could describe how society works. And she did a fantastic job, in my opinion. And I know there's banks and businesses and all sorts of other things that affect society, but I can explain it in basically one sentence. The academics in the universities and in the public policy institutes tell the government man what they should do, and the government man can't get the people to trust them because they're so untrustworthy. So they go to the actors, the bohemians, the media to sell it to the people. And that's the way our society works. The academics who are think they're above everybody else and think they're cleverer than everybody else and think they know better than everyone else designs the policy, gives it to the government who thinks they're better than everyone else for different reasons, who think they got power and think they have control, have no power and control really. It's all perception, and that perception is given by the media, by entertainers, etc. So they go out to the actors and to the musicians, and the musicians and those guys can capture the heart and minds of people. And so if you capture the media, you control society. Would you agree with that, or have I?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's very intuitive. That's exactly what's happening, and it's really a basis for the problems in the world and America, that we don't adhere to our Constitution anymore, and that's because of the academics and the curriculum being taught in our government-owned schools and controlled schools, and the National Education Association, which is a teachers union, has more to do with what our kids are taught than parents or any other entity. And so what has been really big time flowing in America, education, is homeschooling, because the parents saw what was going on and that their kids were being taught and inculcated and brainwashed about wasn't what they wanted their kids to do. So now there's private schools and there's charter schools, and I used to work for a charter school, and a lot of them now are very focused on teaching the Constitution and what our founding fathers believed, and we were allowed to say God if it was a quote from any of the founding fathers. So that was quite a few, actually. But the mainstream schools still were not allowed to say any of that. And so to talk about we are endowed by our Creator, right out of the Declaration of Independence, the first couple of lines, that this is what it all comes from, and that our God-given rights are to be protected, and that's what the purpose of the Constitution was, is to protect what we were born with. And so you're absolutely correct, and I'm really thrilled that you gave that opinion, because I share it totally. But I think you were much more articulate in presenting
Alice Ricks. Alice Ricks from the San Francisco Examiner, a woman from the 2 centuries ago, could define how our society works better than every journalist I've ever heard throughout my entire lifetime. Yes. And I think that's because when you're right down at the base, when you're seeing it form right at the start, and you're seeing how society is now expressing. Say her
name again. I didn't catch her name.
Alice Ricks, R-I-X, and you have to go to the newspaper archives, and you have to go back to the San Francisco Examiner and look at her articles if you want to read them. I'm actually going to probably do a load of read-throughs of her articles, because I find her such an amazing figure who thinks about things so differently that I've done a lot.
What was her first name?
Alice, like Alice in Wonderland, A-L-I-C-E.
Alice, okay.
Yeah.
Alice Ricks.
Okay. Alice Ricks.
Thank you. I'm going to definitely look that up.
Yeah.
Another person, though, from France was very similar. Bastia. The Law. And he called it right. And I think he wrote that 250 years ago or more.
Yeah.
The Law. And if every politician would read the law,
Mhm.
and
If
one other thing
every
too,
politician would only read the
yeah,
law, then we would
yeah,
have a
I know,
different
wouldn't it be something?
society.
And everyone should read my Supreme Court case.
Yeah.
And this is on my website, CSPOA.org. And I put this together. I read my own Supreme Court case. I was the first sheriff in American history to sue the federal government, take it all the way to Supreme Court and win. Everyone in the world should be familiar with this case. It is so foundational, it's so fundamental. And Scalia, Justice Antonin Scalia, wrote the decision, and it was rendered in June of 1997. Has not been changed. But this Scalia said in his introduction of the case, I'm going to take you through a history lesson. And he quotes the Federalist Papers, and he quotes the Founding Fathers, and he quotes the Constitution. And it's probably one of the most important decisions in the last 100 years. And I actually met Scalia, and I told him that I was the primary litigant in this case. And he said that was one of the most important cases I ever worked on.
Mm.
And it's
He worked
so
on some big
powerful.
cases.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So anyway, folks, everybody go to the website, do that. Any of you who want to make donations, you're completely allowed to do that. I invite you to do that and be a part of what we're doing, because we're really promoting liberty county by county, and that we can restore America and our Constitution county by county. We, the people, working with our local officials primarily, and creating pockets of liberty all throughout America. And that's what we've been trying to do. But that's what my wife and I have dedicated our lives to. So
I like the fact that we've been able to speak, and a lot of people would assume we're in different areas, but at the end of the day, we're two humans who are talking about how to regain liberty in a world which is unjust,
right,
and is structured in a certain way, so is definable. And I really do appreciate that we're able to speak. I'm sure that
if you could get me to an event in Wales or London or whatever else, I would love to do that.
I bet you
I would love to
would.
be there in person.
I
would love
bet
it.
you would. I'd love to meet you in person. Now like we got about say 10 minutes, 15 minutes left. Tell me, because I've asked you a few, and I want to ask one question actually just before I ask this, because you did you were talking about you working with Latin Americans, and you actually studied Latin American studies, didn't you?
I did. That was my degree, Latin American Studies, and a minor in sociology. And I lived a year in Guatemala and a year in El Salvador.
Oh, wow.
No, I'm going to say it right. Yo viví un año en Guatemala y un año en El Salvador.
Oh, good accent. Oh, good accent. Well done, you. It's a different world down there. What was your, just very briefly, what was your experience of Latin America and South America?
I was very impressed by the poverty-stricken nations that they were. It really made me feel sorry. I would be in a bus and watch a mother have her two children go to the bathroom in the street next to the curb. And I was really taken by that. And I know that they've all made strides since then, because that was back in the early 70s when I went there. But they're still third world countries, and the banana republics that exist there and the dictatorships that exist throughout Latin America. In my studies, probably the most amazing story ever was Evita Perón. But she climbed her way to the top very ruthlessly, and when she got to the top, she became even more ruthless. And yet there's a Broadway play made out of her life.
Yeah.
And but still, another country that impressed me was Costa Rica, and how they have no army, no military, and they're one of the most peaceful nations in the world.
One of the most beautiful nations in the world too.
And one of the most beautiful. Yeah. And Brazil, with the poverty that's in the big cities. So what did they do? They came up with an idea. Let's get these horrible populations to spread out more. So they created a new capital and put Brasilia in the middle of nowhere and got the population to disperse a little bit better. That was a great idea. I don't think it's worked enough because the population is still out of control there.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
it was an amazing idea.
I do.
And
They are a law
and
unto themselves. I find. When I was
yeah,
living down in Chile, there's a sentence that I kept hearing from all people, and there was a lot because Chile. I mean, relatively, it's still pretty poor, but relatively, it's richer than its neighbors. So you get a lot of immigration coming in. Even from the immigrants, they say the same. They say, "Oh no, the real crazy people are those people from Gringolandia up there. The gringos, they're the mad ones. They see what all of America, all of Europe, everything is Gringolandia, and it's all a
yeah,
madness."
exactly. Yeah. But you know what? Latin America, especially, I'll take an example. I've traveled pretty extensively through Mexico because I live really close to Mexico. And so, but Mexico should be one of the richest countries in the world.
Agreed.
They have all sorts of different places that are the best vacation
Oh,
towns and cities.
mhm.
They have lots of beaches. They have industry. They have oil. They have good people. What has stopped them? What has kept them down? And I believe it's the government's push to keep the society the way it is, and the aristocrats have control of the government, and they don't want a huge middle class taking over.
Yeah.
I guess another problem is that the cartels are far too involved in their gross domestic product,
Yeah.
and it's too much, and they rely on it too much, and it's created a lot of violence. And if a reporter says anything bad about the cartels, they kill them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
If
it's
that dynamic can change, I agree. Mexico would be one of the most popular and inspiring countries on
yes,
earth.
it would.
Is the people of Mexico are very special. They make some
Yeah.
good food. I'm just saying, they
Oh,
make some
they
fantastic
do. They
food.
do.
Okay, going on, going on. President Trump, he's in office now. Obviously, the supporters of Trump are very happy with a lot of what he's done. I mean,
Yeah.
I've already said the parts I disagree with him on. Per se. What would you like to see Donald Trump do now?
Well, my hat's off to him. I would give him an A+ for the work that he's done in securing the border. That's been miraculous. Getting deportation, that still needs a lot of help. And I talked to Tom Homan in his office about 5 or 6 weeks ago in Washington, D.C. I work with sheriffs all across the country, and we want all the sheriffs to participate. We believe that that would be much more effective because nobody knows their counties and their communities better than the sheriff. Washington, D.C. law enforcement does not know my county of Graham County in Arizona. But the sheriff there now, Sheriff Allred, does, and he knows it very well. And Maricopa County, which is the greater Phoenix area, huge, 5 million people in one county. Um, the sheriff there knows the county better than anybody else, and they should be involved with helping with deportation. But the sheriff cannot be forced to either way. And that's one of our big problems there. And Washington State's the worst one for attacking the office of sheriff. And so we're going to have a conference there and try to remind everybody that this is a constitutional republic and that the sheriff does not report to the attorney general or to the governor or to the legislature. He reports and serves the people. That's it. So Trump, I would say, they've got to raise the bar on deportation. But there's so many other freedom issues, God-given liberty issues, that I think he needs to take a deep breath and take a step back and look again at America from the helicopter. He has already mentioned this, that the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, should be abolished, and they should, because they are so unconstitutional and so un-American and so illegal. Their tactics, they're a bunch of bullies. They intimidate the American people. They strike fear in the American people, and this shouldn't be happening. And if the tax structure was fair and simple, we wouldn't even need them in the first place. But it's so convoluted, and they don't even pass their own audits, but they still march on. Liberty, individual God-given liberty, and the IRS cannot coexist. And the historical fact of that is they have not. And the IRS has continued their reign of terror across our country. That organization should be abolished, and they need to revamp the entire structure to make sure that taxes are fair and simple and honest. And the spending of Washington, D.C. is ridiculous and out of control and sometimes criminal, like I pointed out. So the first thing on the list is defund Planned Parenthood. Do not force Americans to pay money to a private organization that provides no government service whatsoever. So defunding Planned Parenthood needs to happen. Reining in all spending needs to happen. Foreign aid needs to be completely curtailed and stopped. It's not our duty to keep. We used to give foreign aid to Venezuela, and now we're bombing their drug boats. We should have stopped foreign aid there a long time ago. I hope we still have. I don't know if we've done that yet, but funding countries throughout the world that hate us, funding a United Nations that hates us, is all counterproductive. And it needs to be America first. Another one too is the Federal Reserve. In Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, it says that Congress shall coin money and regulate the value thereof. Who does that? It's the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve was formed in 1913, and Congress abdicated that responsibility over to private banksters. They do not work for us. They spent $2 billion on renovating their office. They didn't have to get permission from anybody. They didn't get permission from anybody. They just did it. They're an entity unto themselves, and they need to be abolished. He's talked about firing a couple of them. Don't just fire a couple of them, fire all of them, and take that responsibility in our Constitution back to Congress where it belongs, and get rid of these organizations that run our country, destroy our economy, and they've been extremely inflationary, and these things need to stop. And if he really wants his legacy to be freedom-based, look, he doesn't need permission from anybody. He would need to work with House Speaker Johnson in getting these laws passed, but I'm sure they can do it now. And Republicans and Democrats alike have been culpable of improper spending and keeping Planned Parenthood funded and keeping the IRS funded. This needs to stop. This is America, where liberty is supposed to be first. And if we really are putting America first, get rid of the Federal Reserve, get rid of Planned Parenthood, and get rid of the IRS. There you have it. And I'm willing and able to volunteer to help you in any way, Mr. President. You've done a great job. And I hope that we really do make America great again. But we can't keep the IRS and Planned Parenthood. Look, I'm not talking about getting rid of abortion. We're never going to do that. I pray that we could, but we're not.
I want to define that for people listening who, at this point, there's going to be people saying, "Oh, but what about all of these niche, extreme, different reasons? All these other reasons that they can find to say, oh, but we need to keep Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is an organization. The United Nations is an organization. Inland Revenue is an organization. Right. You don't have we can find another mechanism for debating that without these people dictating to us and paying those people to dictate to us.
Debate that I'm bringing up. It's not.
I understand that, but I know that a lot of people won't hear that because they are triggered, and they have been primed to be triggered.
If you want to donate to Planned Parenthood, you go right ahead. I can't stop that, and nobody else can.
Yeah,
I can't. They can exist. I'm not saying they can't exist. I don't like them, and I don't agree with them. But Forced funding from taxpayer dollars is what I object to a
Yep.
private group.
I can dig that. I can dig that all of the way. And I think a lot of what you're saying is about, I mean, just closing out, a lot of what you're saying there is about to happen over in Europe and Britain too. I know that there's been a rollback on a lot of the programs that they introduced over the past 10 years, 15 years, which are really extreme about on loads of different fronts. We've had, when Keir Starmer took office, we had the boats rise by 4 times plus. So the amount of immigrants coming in, I have to say that I am such a big fan of people from other countries. It doesn't affect me in the same way per se, because I'm, I just will get on with anybody, whatever. But when I look out my door, my community is changed in ethnicity, in culture, in language, almost irreversibly, except for the fact that, and this is something that isn't really noted, that a lot of the people who have come in keep within the same communities and won't mix with the outside communities. So there's a lot of, like, for instance, there's a lot of Indian people in my community. Indian people only marry other Indian people. If we were to say that as in white people, everybody would say, oh, you're racist, is it? Yes, because that's how races work. Races tend to I find something very interesting. If you go back to 2014, they did a genetic map of the UK. Very interesting. It shows where all of the, like, my grandparents, they would have tested their genes and they got samples from all around the country, and they discovered that people haven't actually moved for 1,500 plus years. The map of 600 AD is almost indistinguishable from the genetic map. The Cornish are still Cornish people. They're separated from the Devonian people genetically in haplotypes by a border, which is the exact border of their county. There's the Humber people, there's the Lancs, there's different 5, 6, 7 different genetics in Scotland, there's 5 different genetics in Wales. We're all very different people. We may all be white, but we're all foreigners in different ways, and we all found this land. Our ancestors found different parts of these lands. They settled here over time, and people tend to marry people who they feel like connected to, and that's often an underlying genetic process that we don't actually understand or see, or are unable to vocalize properly. And I think that we're going to see the same things you're talking about: the immigration, a push for immigration, a push for controls on these crazy organizations, and a halt to the enforcement of globalism by organizations such as the United Nations, World Health Organizations, and other organizations that are there to dictate from afar without any ability. So I think we're going to see the same thing. I think we're entering into a world which is getting more libertarian, I would say, but in the same way, we have the dangers of the technocracy coming in, automating and giving us our constitution without any sort of like changing our constitutions in every country to be one generic, poorly fitting and ill-fitting and horrible constitution, which is really not. It's just a dictatorship from abroad. Richard, I hope you know that I've had a really good time talking to you today.
So
it's
have
been
I. So
awesome to meet you.
I really want to
time.
come to meet you. If you ever speak or come over to America, let's do an event together. If we can do it over in Wales or London, I would love to do that. I think our two voices might multiply and make it even more powerful together. But thank you for having me, and I would love to come on anytime.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on the NEWSPASTE Podcast.